today. Today's daf Bez Hashem is Masechta Makos Daf Tezvav, and so we're going to start from the last line of Daf Yudalit Amud Beis. Amar Rabba Baba Chana, Amar Rabba Baba Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Here we go. Rabba Baba Chana says the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So just a quick introduction. We know that every lav, if someone eats nevela, he gets malchus, right? He gets the lashes. If he eats chazir, he gets malchus. What happens if someone steals? And does he get malchus? It says signov in the Torah. So the answer is you don't get malchus. Why? Because the Torah tells you that you can correct the lav by veheshev esegzela ashagazal, by returning the item that you stole. So that's called a lav hanitak lasei, a lav that could be fixed by an asay, and therefore you will not get malchus. Comes along Rabbi Yochanan, and he's going to say chiddush that you have a lois asay that has an attached asay, but the asay, the positive commandment, does not fix the lois asay per se. So I'm going to give you the example that the Gemara is going to talk about. Right here on the screen, the Torah tells you that anybody who is a tzarua, zav, tamei nefesh, so somebody who's tamei, he has to get out of the camp. In other words, he can't be around the Mishkan or the Beis Hamikdash. So mezacha nakeva, male or female, tishalechum mechutz lamachaneh tishalchum, send them away from the camp. They should be. So that's a positive commandment. Basically, the positive commandment says that if you're tamei, don't go into the Beis Hamikdash. Then the Torah gives you a negative commandment, v'lo yitamu es machanehem, that if you're in the camp, if you're in the Beis Hamikdash, and somehow, let's say, a sheretz lands on your head, you shouldn't stay there too long. You have to get out quickly. And don't be metama the camp, that I am resting there, that God's presence is there. So this asay seems to be independent of the lois asay. The lois asay says that if you're tamei, you have to get out of the Beis Hamikdash. You can't stay there. The asay says that if you are tamei and are outside the Beis Hamikdash, you got to stay outside the Beis Hamikdash. You can't come in. All right, you should be sent away from coming into the camp. If someone, let's say, is tamei, walks up to the door of the Beis Hamikdash, there's a mitzvah to say to send him away. So now, what happens? So this asay is not so connected. So it is connected, but it precedes the lois asay. So let's say, would you get malchus on this lois asay of v'lo yitamu es machanehem? Is it like a lav hanitik lasay that you don't get malchus, or you do get malchus? So if someone would stay too long in the Beis Hamikdash after he became tamei, is like I said, if a sheretz landed on his head while he's in the Beis Hamikdash and he didn't leave, will you get malchus on this lav? So let's read it inside. Amar Rabba Baba Chana, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, called lois asay, any lois asay, shekademoy asay, that an asay precedes it, and you could keep the asay without ever violating the lois asay. The lois asay seems to be independent than the lois asay, although they're very similar. Like in all of this will be you get malchus. Rabbi Yochanan says you will get malchus. This is not considered a lav hanitik lasay. So comes along the Gemara, and we go to Tesvav Manalef. Amrullah, so they told people who heard from Rabbi Yochanan that you get malchus on this. Amarta, do you really say this? Amalahu, he said, "Lo, I never really said it." In other words, Rabbi Yochanan sort of pivoted and said, "No, I think you don't get malchus." So that's where Rabbi Yochanan, people heard it from him, and then when you asked him, did you say it? Rabbi Yochanan said, I didn't say it. Amar Rabba, but Rabba said, him, I swear that he did say it. And Amora, he did say it. Uksiva v'tanina. And not only that, we have a pasuk and a brisa and a mishnah that supports him. Why? The pasuk says, "Ksiva this is what I told you about." The pasuk says, "Vishalchu min hamachana." That's an assay that somebody who's tamei should be sent away. If he comes to the Beis Hamikdash and he says, "I'm tamei," you got to send him away. You can't let him go into the Beis Hamikdash. Put a guard there. That's the assay. v'lo yitamu es machanehem, and the Torah tells you that there's a loisa say that once you're in the base of Mikdash and you become tamei, you cannot stay there. You have to leave. So this v'lo yitamu es machanehem, is it a type of lav you get malchus? Well, that's what we learned in our Mishnah. Tanina, we learned in our Mishnah, haba la migdash tamei, whoever comes into the base of Migdash and he was tamei and doesn't leave, so he's over this leitamos machanehem. He gets this sin and he gets malchus. So we see in our Mishnah that an asay that's kodam leloisasay, the exact language would be a loisasay shekodmo asay. This is the type of language. So then you would get malchus. So Rabbi Yochanan was absolutely correct, and he is supported by our Mishnah. Elamai Tama, says the Gemara, why did Rabbi Yochanan pivot? Why did he regret what he said? And you said that you don't get malchus. Mishum de kasha le oynis. He has a kasha from somebody who's oynis. An oynis is somebody who rapes. Okay, we'll use the word oynis, a woman. So what does the Chumash say about that? So let's read it. The pasuk says that if you ma'anis, rape a 12-year-old girl, you have to give v'nasan isha shechev to the father. We see it on the screen here. To the father, you have to give 50 kesef, 50 shekels. And the Torah says, v'loi sil isha. You have to marry that woman. That's why you have to stay with that woman forever, for the rest of your life. Pachas hashina, because you raped her. La yuchal l'shalchel kol yamav. There's a lav that you're not allowed to. Here's the lav. Let's just make it in red. The lav says, la yuchal l'shalchel kol yamav. You're not allowed to send her away. Okay, so that's the din by somebody who is ma'anis, a woman. Then there's another din in the Torah, which also says, Lo yuchal l'shalchel kol yamav. There, the Torah is talking about somebody who's married to a woman, just got married, and then makes up a whole baloney story and says, "Hey, my wife, I didn't find any besulim, dam besulim, virgin blood, for my wife. She must have was mezana while I was engaged to her." And then we find out that he made up a whole story. He just wants to get out of the marriage. So that there, the Torah, he's called a moitzi shem ra. So there, the Torah says you have to give mea kesef, 100 kesef to the father of the naira, because he was haitzi shem ra b'sulas Yisrael. Now remember, he's married to this woman. So when the Torah says v'loi si isha, he has to stay with this woman. Not that he's now marrying this woman; he has to remain with this woman. Lo yuchal shalchel kol yamav. He can never give her a divorce. So those are the two things: anis and a moitzi shemra. So comes along, and we're getting back to our brisa. We're going to find a brisa that seems to question Rabbi Yochanan. The Tanya we learned in a brisa, oynis shegirish. Let's say a person was ma'anas, a woman, and then had to marry her. Im Yisrael, if he's a regular Jew, and he gave her a divorce. That's the point. He gave her a divorce. He wasn't supposed to, but he found a rabbi that allowed him to give a divorce. He gave a divorce. So if he's a regular Jew, machzir, he has to return he has to take her back, and he doesn't get malchus. Why? Because lo yuchal l'shalchel kol yamav, he's not allowed to give her a divorce, the Torah says. But if he did, so maybe only if he takes her back, v'loi siya leisha, so then he will not get the malchus. If he takes her back, he will not get the malchus. Now, if you notice, this is a type of essay that precedes the lav, because v'loi siya leisha means you marry the woman, and typically you stay with her for the rest of your life. So it's not connected to lo yuchal l'shalchel kol yamav that you can't get rid of her. It's unlike gzela. In order to maintain the essay of a heishav as a gzela, you have to steal first. Here, you don't have to do lo yuchal l'shalchel kol yamav over the lav and then do the essay. It's an essay that it's a lois essay shekodma essay, and yet the only reason why you're not malchus, you're not getting malchus for this. So in kain hu loike ve'ena machzer. So in Yisrael hu machzer ve'ena loike. That's what if he's a kohen, he cannot take her back. But if he's Yisrael hu machzer ve'ena loike, he doesn't get malchus. Why? It must be that an assay, a lois assay, shekodmo assay, you do not get malchus. So this brisa seems to disagree with Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says that any assay, shekodmo lois assay, loisa say shekadma say that type of lav, you will get malchus. And here by the oynis, The Torah, the Brisa says you will not get the malchus. If you divorce this woman, she's not going to get malchus. Amai, why won't you get malchus? It's a loises say that was preceded by an asay, and therefore you should get malchus, like Rabbi Yochanan said. Because of this brisa, that's why Rabbi Yochanan pivoted. Ula explained. Really, the Torah, you on the surface, loisia leisha, that the Torah wrote by Ma'anis seems to be superfluous. The Torah doesn't have to tell you that if you Ma'anis, you rape a woman, you have to keep her as a wife, because that's obvious. Why? Because lo yoyma loisia leisha ba'onis. The Torah didn't have to write that by loisia leisha ba'onis. V'ligma m'moitzi shemra. I'll learn it out from a moitzi shemra. Ma moitzi shemra shli. Also, I say a moitzi shemra just spoke lashon hara about his wife. Amar Achmana, the Torah said loisia leisha. He has to stay with her. So oinus lekoshkein. So if you actually rape a woman, avada, you have to marry her and stay with her. So in einam inyan lefonav. So loisia leisha is not telling you you have to marry her. I know that you have to marry her. Teinu leachrav. The loisia leisha is going after the lav. It's a regular lav anitik lasei. That what the Torah is telling you, lo yuchal l'shalchel kol yamav. You can't divorce this woman. But if you do divorce this woman, you have to retake her. Oh, so it's a regular lav shenitik lasei. Shem girish yachsa. That's why even though it appears in the pasuk before, you put it as if it said it afterwards. And therefore, if it said it afterwards, then lo yuchal l'shalchel kol yamav. And if you did give her a get, then you have to remarry her. That makes it a lav shenitik lasei, and because of that, that's why that brisa says that you don't get malchus on this lav. Only because v'loisia leisha is superfluous, is extra. We don't by ma'anis. Says the Gemara, v'kati oinus m'moitzi shemra le'gamar. That wouldn't work. Oinus from moitzi shemra. We wouldn't learn it from Moitzi Shamra that an oinus has to keep his wife. The ikala mifrach, because you could ask a question, Mala Moitzi Shamra shekain loike u'mashalim. The reason why Moitzi Shamra has to stay married to that woman, because by Moitzi Shamra, the Torah says you pay 100 kasef, and you're getting malchus, and you're paying. So you're getting malchus, and you're paying. Therefore, the Torah was very strict on a Moitzi Shamra that he has to remain with his wife. By Ma'anis, if he marries, he doesn't have to pay if he gets malchus. So therefore, an oinus is less of a severe avera. So I might think you don't have this mitzvah, you have to marry her. Kamash Malon, you do have this mitzvah. So v'loisia leisha is not extra by oinus. So the Gemara tries it another way. The opposite way. You can say it, let the Torah not write loisila isha by a moitzi shamra. V'ligma ma'oinus, and let's learn it from an oinus. In other words, the Torah did not have to write that if someone is moitzi shamra on his wife, he has to remain married to her. You could learn this pasuk is totally extra. Why? Because I could learn that if an oinus who is not loike mishalim has to loisia leisha kolsken a moitzi shamra. So this loisia leisha is extra by a moitzi shamra. So therefore, why did the Torah write it? It doesn't teach you anything about moitzi shamra. This loisia leisha will be as if it says loisia leisha after ma'ainis, and this will teach you leishuchel shalchel kol yomav by ainis. And if he does, v'loisia isha, so it becomes a lav hanitik lasei. This is a fancy Gemara. So the Gemara says like this: Ella lo yoyma loisia isha b'moitzi shemra. Let the Torah the Ella lo yoyma loisia isha b'moitzi shemra. V'ligma ma'oinus, and learn it from ma'oinus. Ma oinus ain't like a masham. An oinus doesn't get malchus and pay. All barachmana v'loisia isha. They have to marry her. Moitzi shemra like kolshkein. Of course, the Moitzi Shemra has to remain married to this woman. Why did the Torah write the Isha by Moitzi Shemra? It's not teaching you any halacha about Moitzi Shemra. Then it must be teaching you something about being ma'anas woman. If it has nothing to do with before it, then it's talking about afterwards. And after a person was ma'anas' wife, he has another mitzvah of staying with her, and if he divorces her, then he has another mitzvah say to remarry her. And therefore, the leyuchal l'shalchel kol yomav becomes a regular lav hanitek lase. So that's why you don't get malchus. Says the Gemara, Moitzi Shem Ra Ma'onis, Nami Le Gemara. That doesn't either work. You can't learn Moitzi Shem Ra from Oinis. The Ikele Michfrach, Mala Oinis Shekin Osamaisa. The reason why Oinis has a Loisiela Isha because he actually did an act. He was Ma'anis her, he raped her. And therefore, it's Loisiela Isha. How do you know if somebody was just Moitzi Shem Ra on his wife? How do you know he has to stay married to her? So the Gemara says like this, Ella the Gemara tries one more thing. The Gemara says that the loisi isha by Moitzi Shemra is still extra. What does it mean loisi isha? Loisi isha means he should marry her, but that makes no sense by a Moitzi Shemra because it was always his wife. So lama nemar. Why did the Torah say loisi isha? Stay remarried to her. It's your wife. You were married to her. It's only after the chuppah you're making up a whole story that she was mazana when you were engaged. But you were already married to her. That's the whole point of Moitzi Shemra. So why did the Torah write Loisi Elisha? If it has nothing to teach you by Moitzi Shemra, the Torah is teaching you something by Oinis. It's not telling you that a Ma'anas has to marry the woman that he raped, because that we already know from the Loisili Isha that it says by Ma'anis. It's teaching you afterwards that if you happen to have divorced your wife that you married because you ma'anas her, you have a mitzvah to say to remarry her. So basically, the exercise that we're doing over here, as you can see on the screen, is take the pasuk of lo yuchal l'shalchel kayamav, this lav that you're not allowed to divorce a ma'anis, you don't get malchus for it. Why not? Because the Torah gives you a mitzvah essay that if you do divorce this woman, then you have to remarry her again. Where did the Torah write this mitzvah say to remarry the woman? By Moitzi Shemra, because this the whole V'loi Sila Isha by Moitzi Shemra is totally superfluous and extra. It doesn't have to say that V'loi Sila Isha by Moitzi Shemra because you're already married to her. So it's teaching you something about Einus, that if you do divorce this woman, you have a mitzvah to say of V'loi Sila Isha, and because of that, therefore, it's a lav hanitek lasei. Says the Gemara. So the Gemara asked one last question. The ema, let us say, v'im'ena in lefon of the Moitzi Shemra, t'nei in l'achor didei the loylaki. Wait a second. Let us say that the real loisi isha is really needed by Moitzi Shemra, and by Moitzi Shemra, what happens if you divorce your wife, the wife that you were Moitzi Shemra? Maybe that's what the Torah is telling you, that Moitzi Shemra has a mitzvah saseh to remarry her again, but it's not teaching you anything by Oinus. So the Gemara says, okay, Einachanami. It's teaching you only by Moitzi Shemra, and Oinus will learn from Moitzi Shemra. If Moitzi Shemra has an avera of loisa say, you can't divorce your Moitzi Shemra wife, but there's an assay to take her back if you do divorce her. So we'll say that Oinus also will have that same idea, that you can't divorce her, but if you do divorce her, you have a mitzvah to say to take her back. So the Gemara says, but my Gomer mine. How are you going to learn Oinus from Moitzi Shemra? Iba kal v'chaymer, iba mamatzino. No matter what, you're going to try to compare Oinus to Moitzi Shemra. I could always ask you a question. Maybe the reason why the lav of Layuchal Shachal Kol Yomav by Moitzi Shemra is weak and has an assay to it because you never did a Maisa. So the Torah went easy on you by Moitzi Shemra. You didn't do a Maisa, you just verbally libeled your wife. But so the Torah says that this Layuchal Shachal Kol Yomav, you're not going to get Malchus for. But maybe by Onyus, Layuchal Shachal Kol Yomav, you will get Malchus for. So you will get Malchus for, because Loisi Isha is not teaching you anything. It's not, modifying the lav by Oinus. So again, back to square one. Why is it by Layuchal Shachal Kol Yomav by Ma'anis? Getting back to over here. The Brisa said that if someone was ma'anis a woman and he's a Jew, a regular Jew, and he gave her a get, he married her and gave her a get, he doesn't get malchus. All he has to do is take her back and not get malchus. So the Gemara says, how do you know? Ela Amar Rava. Rava says like this: Kol Yoma ba'amoid v'hachzer, and the Gemara says like this, that really the Torah says lo yuchal l'shalcha. That's the lav. Lo yuchal l'shalcha, you cannot divorce you. Kol yamav, all your life is extra. Well, the Torah could have written lo yuchal l'shalcha. Don't divorce her. Why did the Torah write kol yamav the rest of your life? Kol yamav teaches you that if you do divorce her, the Torah is teaching you that there's an assay that you have to remarry her. So it's embedded in this lav right away, and asay. So therefore, liyuchal l'shalchal kayamav is a lav anitik la'asay, and that's why you don't get malchus. But it's not an asay shekadmu loisa say shekadmu asay, because in that case you will get malchus. In this case, you will not get malchus. Amalei Rapapa l'Rava. Rapapa said to Rava, "V'olei dami lavi le'lav dechasima." This lav is not similar to lav chasima. In other words, the classical case that the Torah tells you that you get malchus is muzzling your animal. Torah says that don't muzzle your animal when it's threshing. And if you do muzzle the animal, the Torah right next to it talks about malchus. So that muzzling your animal has no assay attached to it. So it's no assay attached to it. So the Gemara is going back to saying that how could Rabbi Yochanan say that by an assay shekodmoy, by kol loisa say shekodma assay, loikinov, you will get malchus. Once there's an assay next to the loisa say, you should not get malchus of it, because the loisa say of don't muzzle your animal is a standalone loisa say. That's it. There's nothing to talk about. That's a lav that you get malchus. But once you have an assay connected to it, like the example we gave by the Yishalchu min amalchna here in this pasuk, where the Torah says Tishalchem, send away. So the Torah gives you an assay, and then the Torah writes right next to it a lav. Why should you get malchus in that? There's an assay, right near the lav. So the Gemara says, it's not similar to a lav of chasima, and therefore you should not get malchus. So the Gemara is asking against Rabbi Yochanan's original premise, that you do get malchus. Amalei, so Rava answered a papa, just because there's an assay right next to the lav, does that make the lav any worse? But what? How does that weaken the lav? So the Gemara says, Yihachi, then you had asked that question, and every lav shenitik lasei nami. Every lav that has an assay right next to it, for example, gzela, Torah says don't steal, and then the Torah says return the gzela if you do steal. So that, maybe that the Torah is telling you, a lav, you should get malchus for it. Just so, what does this? What you must say that are you going to say the same idea? Lema mishum dekasa beirachmana asay yisera migragara. Are you going to say just because the Torah wrote that you should return the gazela, does that make you not get malchus for the lav of thou shalt not steal? So why do you say that? It's not similar to lav de chasima. Amalei. So Rava explained to Rapapa, Hahu lenatuki lav hu da'asa. Any lav that has an assay associated, connected to it, the assay fixes the loy sigzal. When you steal and then you return it, you actually fix the loy sigzal. But here, by the case of let's say the assay of tuma, that assay is not fixing the lav, so the lav remains pretty strong, and therefore the lav is strong, and that's why you get malchus for it. But on the other hand, when there's a lav hanitak lasay, when the lav can potentially be fixed by an assay, then you say the lav is weak and you don't get malchus. Another good example of a lav hanitak lasay is let's say the Torah says don't leave over kachim, and if you do leave over kachim, you should burn it. So if someone leaves over kachim purposely and doesn't eat it, so he violates the lav, but he doesn't get malchus because he has a way to rectify the lav by burning it. So another 2 minutes and then we'll stop. So the Gemara says, that makes perfect sense. Your explanation is that a lav hanitik laseh is talking about that you never get malchus on a lav hanitik laseh until you can't be mekayim the aseh anymore. For example, let's say you steal and then get rid of the item that you stole and you never paid it back, then maybe you could get malchus. But according to the opinion that says by lav hanitek laaseh, if you right away say I'm never going to be mekayim the aseh, let's say a guy left over kachim and says I'm never going to burn it, so we give him malchus right away. Every lav is strong enough to get malchus. So how would your explanation work? So the Gemara goes to Amud Beis, midu hu taima el Rabbi Yochanan. This explanation is explaining Rabbi Yochanan. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan l'tana. Rabbi Yochanan said to a Tana, bitlei chayev loy bitlei potter. That the only time that you get malchus on a lav hanitik lasei if you can't be mekayim the asay anymore. So as long as you could potentially be mekayim the asay, this lav is a weakened lav, you will not get malchus. Only if you totally got rid of the asay and you made it impossible for yourself to be mekayim the asay, then chayev, then you're liable for the malchus. V'loy bitloy, that if you didn't, as long as you didn't get rid of the asay, you could still potentially be mekayim the asay. Potter, you'll always be potter for malchus. And here we'll conclude another half a minute. The Tani Kamei de Rabbi Yochanan, the Tani Kamei de Rabbi Yochanan. A Tana taught Rabbi Yochanan, Kol mitzvahs loisasei sheyesh ba kum asay, any mitzvahs loisasei that has a kum asay, that you're supposed to, follow up with a asay. Again, don't leave over kachim. If you have kachim, burn it. Kiyam asay, as once you mekayim asay, potter, then you potter. Bitul asay shaba chay. But if you nullify the asay and you can't be mekayim the asay anymore, then you're liable. Let's say a bird came and took the kachim away, then you're chayiv. Amalei Micah Amrit, what are you saying? Rabbi Yochanan didn't understand what this Tana was saying. He used two different languages, kiyam and bitul. Kiyam potter, you should write either kiyam potter, loy kiyam chayiv. Keep it similar. The words have to go together. If you mekayim the asay potter, you're potter from malchus. Loy kiyam, if you weren't mekayim the asay, chayiv, you chayiv malchus. Bitul chayiv, loy bitul potter. So Rabbi Yochanan corrected the brisa. Bitloi v'loy bitloi. That Rabbi Yochanan corrected it. That's the point is bitloi v'loy bitloi. And Rosh Lakish Amikima v'loy kima. Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion that as long as you could potentially be mekayim the asay, then you don't get malchus. So every lav hanitik lasay is such a weakened state, you don't get malchus for. But every lav that has an asay associated, but it's not a nitik lasay, according to Rabbi Yochanan, you will get malchus on that. And Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, Kimoi v'loy kimoi. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish argues, and he says, no, every mitzvah asay, loisa say, you will not get malchus if you mekayim the lav. But if you're not mekayim the lav, even though you could be mekayim the lav, you will get malchus on that. We're going to discuss this more tomorrow, Pesach Hashem. Okay.
Thank